if they want to do like a generational wealth piece and have fun with it, then I would suggest, look, we're coaching entrepreneurship. It just happens to be real estate as the vehicle, right? It's a business. Like you come in, I can try to do a deal in 20 minutes. It's everything else that comes into your play, as you know, as an entrepreneur. So we're building business owners and entrepreneurs. Oh, by the way, the vehicle is real estate. So they could, I'm biased for hours, but whatever niche you want to look at, take 3 simple steps.
Welcome to the Path to Passive podcast, where we talk about building wealth and empowering lifestyle through commercial real estate investing for tech professionals. I always wish that other tech professionals reaching financial freedom had documented their journey along the way, so I'm doing it for the rest of us. Join us as we explore stories, many failures, and lessons learned along the way. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. Chris, thanks, dude. Thank you so much for being here on the show. I did some study on you already, man. It was really cool to see even the show with you on Rod Khleif's show there a bit ago. And it was, I just wanted to learn more about you even more than I had already. I actually had your son on, Nick, and that was a pretty cool,
Cool.
show a couple months ago. So great to have you here too. And you've had quite a long, successful career weathering the storms up and down. And you started right around 91. Was that right?
Yep, you date me, but yes.
No, I think it's awesome because, like I was saying, you've seen a lot of those challenges. So I just want to set the tone, to make sure we get a great a pre-frame before you introduce yourself and let all the listeners know. Tell us a little about yourself, and starting from that time.
Yeah. I won't put them to sleep with 34 years, but I will just brush it. And you can peel it back, Stephen, and we can, peel back the onion. So 91 started building on what I call spot lots. So there were neighborhoods where they were just infill lots, onesie, twosies, not knowing what creative financing was or creative real estate was. I approached owners because I had no money in my 20s, and I had them basically pledge their land, let us sell a package to be built on it, and bring a builder in. And then when everybody got paid was at the very end of the deal, when the buyer had the money and financed it. So it was a crazy deal. Now I look back in hindsight, but at 20, you don't mind asking for that stuff. So that's what I did. I then bought a Realty Executives franchise, sold that to Coldwell Banker in 2000. And then that run from 2000 to the 2008 crash was mostly coaching at the time, not real estate investors like today, but realtors. High GCI, like $2 million GCI, but their life was a mess, right? So I was coaching them, about 50 clients. And then the crash hit, I had about 22 or 23 properties that I was personally pledged on. So if anyone's listening, that's you going to the bank, guaranteeing the loan, pledging your personal guarantee is risky. And I don't do it anymore, but that's what I did back then because I had good credit. And I thought that was what you do. After the crash, it took me a while to get out of my own way because I was beat up mentally and financially. But after that, that was the impetus to do what we're doing today. And what do we do today? It's a family company. We buy and sell property without using banks, without using gobs of our own money. So it's all creative real estate. And then we started getting demand around 2014 from a local war college, from individuals that have been going to Afghanistan 3 or 4 tours and just said, enough, I got to go back to civilian life, and asked us to coach them. That's how it all started, believe it or not. And then that has morphed into us doing deals with students all across North America. So when I say we do deals, Steve, we don't just sell a product, right? So many people do this in real estate. We actually give them an experience of doing deals with us, and that interactive learning in the trenches, because stuff comes up. I don't care how you teach it, stuff comes up that you don't expect. And that's how we interact in the field. We've got about 140 or so, what we call associates out and about, and we revenue share with them. So we're in the deal with them. And I keep saying it's a family company. It started with me, then me and my son, who you met. And now we've got, because of COVID, thankfully, we've got people all over the country that work with us now, and then these associates. So that was kind of fast forward, but I can go back to any piece of that detail if you want. Happy to.
No, I love that. Let's tease that apart as we go here. I've got some questions I definitely want to get into, but I really like that you guys have a metric too, as you're talking about doing deals with you, right? As the metric is, I think it's like time to first deal, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And I thought that was really cool to check out because that does make all the difference. How do you guys go about doing that? And was that the model when you first started? How did you guys think about or really put that together of that is the metric that needs to be put in place for your students?
Good question. I don't know if the time to first deal came in place until a new community director started. So I'm going to guess 2019-ish. And the reason was this. I just got tired. I mean, been at it for a while, right? So I get tired of seeing the marketing to this day of people pushing courses and then there's nothing behind it. So I talk to people and they go, yeah, Chris, I saw your company, but unfortunately I spent X amount of dollars on all these things in the past and they didn't really care about me. I hear it all the time. So we
Yeah.
started paying attention to, okay, how quickly can we get someone to a deal? Because if we do, we'll talk about the profitability of our trademark 3 paydays here, but when we get someone to a deal, it's profitable. So if we can get them there quickly and we can prove that and measure that, that's a world of difference. People could say, okay, I can sink my teeth into that. Whether they like the date or not, they can sink their teeth into it, you know? So we
Yeah.
started paying attention to that as a company.
Cool. So then tell me about the 3 paydays.
Yeah, so 3 paydays was born from the crash too. So up till the crash, I made good money in real estate. I have no complaints about it. But in hindsight, when I was re-looking at it, going, all right, I'm going to re-engineer my business and life. What do I want? One was don't use banks, don't sign personally. Okay. Two was, all right, this is kind of crazy. I'm building houses, or I'm doing flips, or when I was a realtor, I'm selling houses. But it was all transactional. So I
Mhm.
call that the old way of doing real estate now. So, people in your tribe working a lucrative W-2, well, they don't want another job. They want to create some wealth, right? So they started realizing that, and I said, okay. So the three trademark paydays are: payday one is when we put a buyer in a home, they come in with a non-refundable down payment that goes in our pocket. Payday two is we're exiting these properties on a rent to own. So we're paying some kind of underlying debt or the seller, and we're collecting a bigger payment from the tenant buyer while they get their loan in place. That's a delta that we keep. And then the
Mhm.
third payday is really cool because it's the markup on the property plus any and all principal pay down throughout the entire deal accrues to us. So these deals, I'll give you a metric. These deals range like 35, 45,000 low to a high of 350,000 per deal, all 3 paydays. So that's why I said earlier, they're lucrative deals. These types of deals are a lot of people in corporate, I was telling you off air, come to us
Mhm.
and go, look, either I wanted to exit my W-2, show me how, or you know what? I just want to do 2 or 3 of these a year because they're
Yeah.
they're nice little wealth builders. So either way is great. I don't know if that helps you with that one.
Yeah, it does. It does. I gotta ask though, right? Like, as we were talking, tech professionals, they're working for the FANG or MANG companies, what have you, the Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, etc.
Yeah,
Takes a lot of hours, right? And it is what it is there, but also, what does it look like to get started for like one of your programs, as an example? Because I know when I was doing some of single family homes when I was starting before I was making LP investments and looking to raise capital, et cetera, like I'm looking for a highest return. Right.
yeah,
And when I'm talking to, colleagues, whatever, they're like, Steven, Arita, my last name, like, hey, what do I do? Should I go pick up a rental? Should I do something like an Airbnb? I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about what your goals are. But realistically, we got to lay it out, like how much time the will be spent in order for that investment, right?
yeah,
And what they want to do. So I think it's just one of those questions that has to be really asked of, well, what does it look like and
yeah.
what is the return on investment?
Let me do this. I love answering questions with real stories. So what came to mind as you were walking through that, and I'm picturing corporate, is this guy Rick. He's not far from me, coincidentally. He's in New Hampshire, but he worked for the government for 30 years. And because of what you said, one myriad of other reasons, but because of what you said, he was trying, like, I'll try wholesaling, I'll try Airbnb. Just couldn't pop it because why? Because he had like 120 employees he had to like run.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
electrical engineer for the government. So he finally found us, and so I'll fast forward how long it took him and how he did it. He's working 8 to 12 hour days, easy, and he has all those people to report to. We just carved out windows where he could work the business. We put VAs, virtual assistants, in place because he could afford it, right? He was fine at the corporate scene, multiple six-figure income. And so what we did is we helped him exit in 2 years. And then he came in and saw us a little while ago. I did a video of him. He just surpassed 1 million. Now he probably made, when I say strong six figures, maybe 200 plus bennies, right? So he surpassed that pretty quickly. His first 5 deals put him over 500,000. So there was a very, very specific plan in place specific to him. So like you said, you asked him, well, what are your goals? Others have
Yep.
done it in 9 months, others longer, 3 years, right? It just depends on what their palette is for how much cash they need or deals to see before they do it. But that's a realistic, like in that range of 9 to 36 months is realistic to exit.
Okay. And is it from like the marketing perspective, is that using VAs for marketing? Because or is that yeah, because you want to get started with generating leads first to get
Yeah, we don't. Yes, good question. Because we don't spend money on. When I started, I had no extra cash. My credit was trash, so I didn't go out and spending money on mailings and stuff like that. That I didn't really have a grip on, like an instant result. So
Yep.
we use virtual assistants, and to this day use them. They do the outbound call. When someone raises their hand and says, "Yeah, have Steven call me," then the associate steps in and gives them a call. So they're talking to sort of low hanging fruit as much as they can.
Got you. Okay. Um, Interesting. Are there opportunities to do? Is it um, really, you were talking about doing wholesaling, is what the gentleman had started on and tried in previous stuff, but your bread and butter is creative finance. So looking at subject twos like wraps and stuff like that as
Correct.
well.
Yeah, because wholesaling, I have a lot of good friends that make a lot of good money in wholesaling because they've scaled it. So I'm not poo pooing on them. But the fact is, it's a job, right? You're spinning plates for little money, in my opinion. So
Yeah.
yes, we're going to buy three ways. We're going to buy owner financing, but we've niched this one down, Stephen. We buy free and clear homes, then we do owner financing with principal only payments. Super lucrative because it's principal only getting hammered down every month, or
Yeah.
subject to your point, or lease purchase. Those are three ways we buy. That's it. Now there's nuances, right, when you're in those deals, but those are the three ways.
Can you break those down a little bit just to expand on for the listener? I've talked about them in kind of different episodes, but my particular listener may not be super familiar with them right now.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Okay, owner financing. Let's go that one. Owner is probably the most lucrative if you do it right. Owner financing, we're going to look for a seller who's free and clear. About a third of the properties in the United States are. So it's not like it's a big pool.
Hmm.
Once we do that, we have no problem getting them to their price as long as we get principal pay down monthly payments, not interest, and a term that makes sense for us to then let that, let's say season because we're paying principal every single month. They're just acting as a bank. If someone's listening new to real estate, instead of me going and getting a loan and coming to the table, they're my bank. I'm paying them every single month. And then at some point in the future, 4, 10, my commercial building was 20, there's a balloon due. And then at that time, you either exit it, or the way we exit it, you have someone else exit it and pay everybody off, or you're refinancing, you're doing some other play to exit out of that. That's owner financing on the
Hmm.
purchase side. On the sub two, this is interesting because we are seeing properties in the community. Remember, the interest rates were 2, 3, 4%. I don't know when we'll see them again, but we're having students find these properties, and there's ways you can pull lists, or you will stumble upon them anyway with your lead gen, and then buy them subject to. What does that mean? It means the seller is keeping the loan in their name. They're the guarantor. Title is transferring to your entity or your trust. They remain as the guarantor. You never will guarantee a property. At the peak of we had 72 or 74 properties going into COVID, and
Hmm.
we weren't on one single solitary loan. That gives you leverage, that gives you flexibility. The bank can't come and go, well, we got you. You're assigned personally, you got to pay up. Totally different conversation when you're dealing with sellers and you are not signed personally. So that's subject to the existing financing, is what sub two means. And then lease purchase is the simplest of all, probably the route most new people want to go, because those first two options I gave you, they're coming up with some money because we're giving the seller nothing. We got to probably pay their transfer tax. Like, you can't expect them to come out of pocket to sell their house, right? And
Yep.
there might be some arrears if someone's selling you their property sub two, they might just be in trouble and want to be out. So there's a little money. I'm talking a few thousand, not tens of thousands. But on the lease purchase, I'm going to buy your home. Let me give you some numbers. Steven, you have a house you're on the market for 500. You owe 250.
Sure.
Conventional market's not selling, not getting you your number. So you go, look, I have time. I just want to protect my 250 in equity, and I'm not getting it on the open market. Okay. So we're going to do a lease purchase. We're going to enter this arrangement where I pay your underlying debt every single month. I take over your maintenance and your repairs. And then some date in the future, usually only 36 months because of the capital gains exclusion. We don't want to go past 3 years of you out of your home, right? So 36 months or before, we're going to cash you out with that 250,000, and the payoff on the loan, which is not 250 anymore, it's lower, right? Because it's time passed. So that's a lease purchase. That agreement we have built is built with a $10 deposit. So a new investor can get into that. Control, I'll give you one more quick story. Brian in Chicago controlled his first 8 properties, lease purchase, didn't buy any of them. $10 a contract, 838 grand he generated in paydays 1, 2, and 3. For future paydays. It wasn't day one. That's an example of how you can control a lot of property for little money and never take a bank loan out.
Yeah, controlling the option. So that those three different ways. the lease purchase, the owner finance, and the sub two.
Yep.
And it's kind of interesting because one of the questions that when I was first getting into this and kind of learning about it was like, well, Chris, this sounds great, but why would the owner do something like this? Why would they
Yeah.
negotiate it that way? And
Yeah.
so, can you drop some points on how that negotiation goes, and like how do you talk to seller?
I sure
Like,
can.
yeah,
Because this is by far the biggest question I get on podcasts. Because people go, "Well, how do you convince them? What do you
yeah,
twist around with?"
yeah,
Okay, so here's the deal to know first, and then we'll talk stories. We're never selling or convincing. We're always listening to, can I either solve a problem they have, i.e., they're in arrears, right? They need a fix tomorrow, or in the free and clear seller, they don't owe anything. They're okay financially. It might be helping them accomplish a goal the market can't help them accomplish. Okay, so let me give you both ends of the spectrum. And by the way, the script is simple at the very beginning anyway. For me to get to know if you have a problem, it's real simple. Just like I would talk to you as my neighbor. I see you for sale sign. Hey, Stephen, I see you selling. Where are you going? I'm going to Mississippi. Great. When you need to be there. And then here's the key question: what if that plan doesn't happen? That's it.
yeah,
That tells you they'll, oh, I'll stay. I don't really need to sell. Okay, no motivation. Or no,
right,
no, no, it has to happen. I'll dump my price or I'll do this. Okay, now I know where I can solve. That's it. So two extremes. So let me think of okay, recent couple getting divorced, not amicable, one on the loan, one on the deed, in arrears $4,000. Not a lot of money, but in arrears $4,000. So they called us. We bought that subject to. There's no convincing or selling there. It's I can solve your financial problem next month. You don't have to go behind a third month, okay, and have foreclosure, which will haunt you for 7 years, right? You don't have to say that. They know that. I'm saying.
bankruptcy,
So we
bankruptcy.
bought that. Yeah, we bought that property. We still have that property. We bought it sub two. Never heard from them after that again. One was on the deed. They signed it over. One's still in the mortgage as a guarantor. We're not, but we paid every month. And
Mhm.
so that was an extreme story. If somebody needs a band-aid, that was the fix. My building that I mentioned, I've just sold out of this a year and a half ago. But my commercial building that I put my own companies in, so it wasn't our normal exit. It was a great investment. That was an 18. We bought that for about 550 grand. Why did the seller sell it? He had a 4x8 sign like on this busy road that said owner financing, and he said, Chris, realtors are coming in here saying I have offers for you. He said they don't get it. Why he was selling that way is trust and estate planning reasons and taxes. So he
Mm,
didn't want a cash sale. And he was advertising it, and the realtors just didn't get it. So they were bringing him like conventional offers. So I went in, gave him his price. We negotiated. I usually do principal. He wanted interest. So we
mm.
negotiated a bunch of principal for 18 months, and then we amortized it. Like it was just a cool, creative deal that he appreciated. And so there's two extremes. One was trying to accomplish a goal, he didn't have a problem, and one had a problem. So all we're
Yeah.
doing is solving a problem and helping them accomplish that goal. That's it. All the time. You're looking and listening for that.
Yeah, I think it's so cool because to your point too on that owner financing aspect, there could be such a big range of that too. Could be people don't want a big chunk of cash in year one because of
Yeah.
tax reasons, and maybe they want to spread that over time, et cetera, et cetera. But on the subject to aspect, it's you were talking about they wouldn't have to be behind on a third month because if they're in a your classic sub two seller would be someone who can't pay their mortgage, and so you take it over,
Typically. Yeah.
help pay, right?
Yeah.
Um, and the arrears, can you explain that one just quickly?
Yeah, and then I have an extreme on this whole scenario. So the arrears they're not always in arrears, but they sometimes they catch it ahead of time. They know and they need help. But the arrears, it was $4,100, and they weren't in trouble. But another month or two, right, the bank would be barking at them. So
Mhm.
what we did was this: all our agreements are built contingent upon us finding our buyer. So we're not going on the hook for anything right away unless we choose to.
Yeah,
So we found a buyer for this house. They remember payday one. They put $41,000 down, and we paid $4,100 to cure the loan. No big
nice.
deal, right? So that's how you play these. You make sure you have the money in your hand or simultaneously at closing. The gentleman I mentioned that worked for the government, just to kind of put a squash to what I just said, that is always a problem with sub two. It's not always. We have what we call a hybrid where Rick secured, I think 3 out of 6 or 7 of his deals were a affluent seller had a second or third home, just like I'm done, $3,000 payments here, $5,000 here. So Rick bought these properties subject to the underlying loan, but they had a ton of equity still, like 200 or 300 grand. And
Mm,
all they cared was, you know what, I'm done with it. I'm not going there anymore. Lake house, this or that. So you take care of my payments. I trust you, Rick, and I'll sell you the house. I want my equity on or before whatever. Usually it's 4 years, no interest, no payments, typically. So he
nice.
protects it, but he doesn't have to go ahead and pay it till he exits out of his deal. So those
Yeah.
happen too.
And for if some reason after you've bought it sub 2 and you've got someone in that are to you paying it down, if you can't for some reason, they would just get the property back?
Technically, yes, but morally and ethically, what we do though, because if you do it right, you have plenty of time. So if someone's in my home and they're going through credit repair, let's say that was their issue, the buyer, I'm going to be notified if they get off the program. And if they get off the program, they default in their agreement. And if they default in their agreement, what can I do? If my term is long enough, I can just resell it with another rent-to-own buyer. We typically don't like to do that. Our success rate's like 90 to 97%. It's pretty strong. But there's the pivot. Or can I sell it conventionally? Sure. We've done that before. During COVID, out of 70 something, we had like 4 major headaches. That's pretty good. Landlords had like 74 out of 74. One was that she worked at a school and just couldn't, in tears, like, here's your keys. I can't do it. And we called the owner and said, can we extend the term? That's an option. The owner said, no, she's in a nursing home. The daughter said, no, we got to get this done. So we sold it conventionally. You can do that. There's always a pivot. And that's why, remember I said, when you're interactively coaching people, these things come up, you call your coach, you go, hey, here's my curveball. What do I do? That's how we handle it.
Awesome. Um, I know you have a ton of content on this type of stuff. I do want to, use the rest of our time. I have a couple questions I wanted to get into the meat of as well. So,
Sure.
You're listening to this and you want to learn more about the stuff, absolutely go check out Chris's other podcasts, other content as well. But I want to pivot here. So one of the things that you talked about with Rod actually was, around many different masterminds that you had been in. You talked about an accountability buddy that you had that you would check in with as well. And since your business career of buying a franchise and sort of that, and being in business for a while now, you had to really pivot and kind of reinvent over and over and over. So my questions to you are: how did you get into? What made you dive into those first masterminds? And I'll start there. How did you get into those first masterminds? How did you hear about them? What made you get in them? And where I'm going with this is how did you evolve and your business evolve as you jump from one group to the next and pick up new lessons from each of the different topics those groups offered you?
Yeah, it's invaluable. Like I can't even put a price on the outcome of being in these different masterminds or coaching programs. So let me go to where it started, like you asked. So I used to follow 2 people when I was younger, and I'm dating myself on these. But the Think and Grow Rich Napoleon Hill book was by far something I kept reading. I know that's everybody still reads that,
Yeah.
but I would also listen to, there were cassettes then. Earl Nightingale's program, he had a bunch of them, but both of those were big advocates of that, right? So when I remember being in college and I went to my father and said, hey, give me like some business owners, and I'll call them and ask them if I can just have coffee with them and ask them. And I'd go with my journal and say, what would you do different? Think basic questions. And so that's where it started. That was not paid, right? That was, hey, my son wants to come meet you. And I was in college and further. Then later on, it was, if I look back in 33 and a quarter years, Stephen, the only 2 times I had a headache, like a curveball, one was a crash, one was in the early 90s. Mid 90s, I look back in hindsight and go, wait a minute, those are the only 2 times I didn't have a mentor or a group or a mastermind. Crazy. I just figured that out like after the crash. I'm like, this is nuts. So what could I have done differently? Could have just called them up and said, hey, you went through this before. What do I do? Because after the crash, I went to a couple people and they laughed. They're like, that's nothing. Let me tell you what I did. So there's always someone that went through it, right? Especially now with the internet. So as far as like, you said what I call kind of stacking, like you go to this one, you learn this, you go to this one, you learn this. So aside from the content, right, the contacts in the thinking bigger piece, those 2 things can't be, you put a value on those either. So the contacts, meaning you open a door for me that changes my world. My wife knows I'm big on like tracing it. Like I'm like, yeah, I talked to that guy, Steven. He told me to call this guy and look at because of that, boom, 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 boom. And you can trace it all. Example. One mastermind I was in, I was a solopreneur for years. I think a lot of you listeners can appreciate this. And so I banged my head on $1 million because it was me. It'd be like million. Because you can get to $1 million by doing what? More calls, more hustle, more follow-up, work longer. Everybody, I don't want to water it down, but you can get to $1 million, right? It's trying to go past that. And so I started asking around in the mastermind I was in, and they gave me 2 names. One, I met in December of 17, joined their group, and to this day, I credit them with 100%. I tell them this on this podcast, 100% of our growth, because now we've hit Inc. 5,000, fastest growing companies 3 years in a row. Like none of that would have happened because back then I wasn't thinking, hire people in org chart. He would show me this. I'd be like, oh, what are you kidding me? I never even thought about it. but we learned it and we grew that way, and then never would have done it without them. That's a great example of this company wouldn't even be the same company anymore from one contact. So I went off on a few different tangents there, but I hope that got to your question.
No, it's good. I mean, so that one you're talking about, you said you had joined in 2017.
Yeah.
Were there, just out of curiosity, was that like like the fifth group you'd been in, like,
Oh, got
or
it. No, I mean, if I had to put a number to it, because I've had a coach or a group always since college, whether it be personal, physical, nutrition, business, real estate. So no, I had several real estate coaches. When I entered the brokerage arena in '90s, I
Mhm.
did the same thing. I never forget this. My broker owner said to me, again, I was in my late 20s. I said, what can I expect? He said, you probably sell 10 houses this year. I wanted to throw up. Like, they wouldn't even pay my bills. So then I reached around. I said, looked into coaching programs and said, who's selling more than 100 homes a year? 10 times what he said. They gave me a company. I shadowed them, and then I hired that company who trained her. It took me 3 years to get to 100.
Yeah.
But that was only because I found the person doing 100, right?
Yeah.
So again, same concept. So to answer your question a little bit more succinct, every year we go, what do we need? That year we needed scaling because I never knew how to do it. One year it might be, well, we need sales this year. One year it might be, we are suffering on marketing. So we join groups and coaching programs and or masterminds based on what we need that year or 6 months or whatever.
Based on the problem that you were hitting. So you're
Yeah.
constantly evaluating, looking at what problems we're hitting right now and what do we need to solve for, and then work backwards for outcomes on that.
Yes. And simultaneously, where are we going that we just don't know how to get there? I never did it.
Yeah. Is that kind of like like a kind of classic, like 3-year plan, 1 year type of thing? Or when you were talking about, or going toward, how did you think about that?
Yeah. Okay. So as a company, we do 3-year missions
Yep.
starting in 17. But as a personal, so our leadership team will go personally also in addition to company, what do we need? Right? What do you need to do, Stephen, if you're on our team and leadership team? What do you need this year? What do you need for the next trimester? And we'll do that micro coaching too as well and send them through different contacts we have.
Micro coaching. So those leaders, if they need what, as an example?
We have a new leadership team. In order for us to move from the 5 million to the 10 million range, that's a totally different bus, right? Like, it's
Mhm.
not going to be easy. So the 2 or 3 leadership people that in our team who never been there, we said, okay, you go through some of this leadership training. We placed them in a training and paid for it.
Mhm.
So that's an example of what we need at the time. And hopefully after that, then they're going to be training other people, because I just am a firm believer in the leadership will pull revenue
Yeah.
versus, so many people go, oh, I can't afford to put that person on. No, you can't afford not to if you do it right, because they're going to pull your revenue.
Got it. So you're talking about what they need. So growing people as leaders, developing others, communicating better, communicating more succinctly, and then more tactical statuses, being proactive, looking around corners, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, constantly,
Yeah.
constantly. We do trimesters, so every trimester versus quarter.
Yeah. Got you. Um, this is a question. It's a little bit for me, I guess, probably for everyone. But how did you know along the way that you were on the right track with what you're doing? I mean, this, and what I mean with that is, it's kind of like, um, you're talking about thinking bigger, you're looking at things strategically. I mean, my thinking is that it can go a couple different ways. It's like, well, what are my external signals, and what are my internal signals? Like, how do I feel about this?
I agree.
Trying it on, versus like, what are my metrics? What are my KPI? All that kind of stuff, right? And like, am I delusional? Like, do I think this is the right thing versus could it be? So, kind of putting some meat and context around that question is, in your business career, personal, and how those intertwine. How did you know that you're on the right path with how things were evolving?
It's all of the above, and I'll add a few more. Like, I like what you said with how I feel, 'cause that's super important. I'm going through some things now, decision wise, it could be big. My wife said, "Remember, trust your gut." This was just yesterday, so I agree with you 100%. Secondly, it would be those masterminds or mentors, or if you don't have one, then you look out for one that's done that, right? We're seeking equity partners, for example, right now. Well, I never did that. So I called one of our partners who has exited twice from a very large company, built one of the largest fitness brands in the world. I met him on my podcast. So I called him, and I call him constantly and ask him questions, because I've never been through it. The piece that I didn't bring up at the beginning with your list is, and then my wife and I have been married, this will be our 39th year in August. So we've been through a lot, right? With upset. So I'll say, "What do you think?" And here's what I'm thinking. And she usually reads people way better and has a way better succinct opinion of what's going on.
Yeah. So you kept them picking up the phone to call them. How did you set that up? I mean, I hate to ask it. I don't know exactly right now how to ask that question because it's something along the lines of, you want to with mentors, etc. And I assume this is kind of what it's turning into if you're looking to model them and to get some
Yeah, yeah.
advice. It's ask the question and make sure that you damn well execute, right? Don't just ask and not do anything with it.
Well, yeah.
But how have you set that up to
Um,
feel
it
free
depends
to
on the relationship, Stephen. Tell me if I'm hitting it, if I'm tracking with you. So when I say depends, let me do two kind of extremes. One is I read a book and I go, oh, this is cool. I have a relationship right now. I talked to her today that about 3 years ago, I read her book and I'm like, this is cool. Then I picked up another one. I want to see who I wanted to call. It was about dealing with equity partners and whatnot.
Mhm.
And one was called Exit Rich. And that was one I'm thinking of. But I called and emailed the author and
Mhm.
just and said, look, read your book, got some questions. Also want to know if you had mentoring and coaching. I do that a lot.
Nice.
I don't think people do that enough because they think the author won't answer them. No, they'll answer you. You'd be shocked. And every author tells me the same. Yeah, I don't get many of those calls. So when I do, I make sure I answer it and reach out, and I hope people do the same to me. So that's as far as setting it up. Is that what you meant? Like, how do you get in the door, so to speak?
Yeah, and then do you just keep asking after that? It's like
Well, I try to establish a relationship after that because you don't want to, like, the worst thing you can do to someone and say, hey, just want to pick your brain. Well, they don't want you to pick their brain. That's not
that's
so.
what I
And
mean. Yeah.
yeah, so I usually want to see if they have programs, if they have. Okay, so here's an example. I said to this guy who was on my podcast who built those fitness brands,
Mhm.
I called him after the podcast once. I said, hey, do you train CEOs? He said, no, but I'll tell you what I do. I take equity positions in companies and I help them scale and all this. And so to this day, he's a partner from that
Yeah.
one podcast. And you'd appreciate this as a podcast host. I'll deviate a little bit here. I got the show sheet and I review it for the show to prep like you did for me. I could tell you prep, right? And I called my son-in-law and I said, hey, who's this guy? He owns a gym. Like I didn't understand what he did. He said, no, you idiot. He sold this company twice at $40 million a piece. He built one of the largest fitness brands and you need to have him on his show. And to this day, he's a partner. So remember the connection thing we talked about? So the
Yeah.
connection gets made by you or someone, and then you reach out and you form a relationship that's mutually beneficial. You're not picking their brain forever.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it. Everything uh everything ends up being some kind of ask, but a negotiation, not to boil it down too
In a
much, but
sense, indirectly negotiation, because if they have a program already or an experience you can be in, right? And if
yeah.
not, they tell you like this guy, no, 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 I don't do that, but I do this.
Right. Right. Exactly. Um all right. Two more sets of questions
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Talk to me about how core values are big for you, as I think they absolutely, should be. It's not just core values for your business, your team, but
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, you were talking about core values also being really important to your family too,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
So how did you put together do you have two sets of core values, or do you have one set that's the same for business and they apply to, or one set that applies to both life and business, or do you kind of have like overlap of 20% or so
No, this is
between both?
good. No one's ever asked me that. We haven't sat down and quote unquote revised anything personally in years and years, but two or three of the ones we have in the company will always hold. For example, operating all transactions at the highest integrity. Well, it doesn't have to be transaction in person, it could be communication, right?
Yeah.
And it comes up when you make a decision. You have to say, is this aligning with that? Clear, blunt, and to the point, no gray area is one of ours. That doesn't mean you people are rude. It means you're very clear and there's no gray area,
Mhm.
right? So that's how we operate in business and in our personal. Yeah. So there is definitely some overlap. I would think anyone with a personality will have overlap. I would think they're not two entirely different people in the different
Right.
environments, right? Yeah.
Yep. So then it sounds like the answer is, if you're being authentic and congruent, you'd want to have the same in both contexts. And why wouldn't you? Because earlier you were talking about making your business around your life. So you were thoughtful in showing up the way that you are and using business as just a vehicle along the way.
Yeah, the biggest comment anyone can get, in my opinion, is when I meet someone at an event and they go, "Oh, you just like what I thought," or I thought because they see you on YouTube or something, they think there's some special thing going on. No, there's no special thing going on. I'm just like everybody else, just being
Yeah.
real.
Yeah. So you hadn't revised them in quite a long time. So they have.
Personally, we do relook at the business ones. We haven't had to. We actually dropped them before because it's a little redundant. But no, we still have the same value since 17 here at the company.
How'd you put those together to begin with?
We met and voted on. That's a good question because it's not like people say, well, how do you operate with family all the time? And say, well, it's not about personality or family. It's about we voted on these values. This happens to be our mission right now and our purpose, but we voted on these values that we live by. So a decision comes across and it's not, oh, he's a family member. Or, oh, it's, does it fit? That's all. And we voted on them. And so people pick them. Just like every trimester, the team picks the priorities for the trimester. I don't love it all the time. Be like, ah, man, why aren't they working on this project? But it's a vote, and so that's the fairest way to do it.
But you certainly provide your input and advise to make sure that they're aligned. And yes,
Oh
trust
yeah,
me,
I
your
do
team.
my selling.
Yeah. I mean, with a great leadership team, if the outcomes and the true north is clear, then people can scrutinize and yeah. So
and the more clear it gets, our last two offsites, we do offsites every trimester. We left there going, well, this was cool. Everyone seemed to already be on the same page getting to the offsite. It wasn't like this major push and pull, even though it can be at an offsite. It was pretty much we kind of know where we're rowing right now. This is pretty cool. Like it took years to do that.
What are the tiebreakers, if any, if people aren't on the same page?
In that environment, the voting environment, we let them justify why. Like if it's their item, I remember two offsites ago, Kelsey was super sharp. Really, I won't say sold us, but really told us why she was just passionate about a particular priority that she thinks should be our focus that trimester. And we all went, wow, well, okay, we're in. You did a good job. So it's okay. Tell us more about that. Then maybe we're missing it if we didn't vote for it. Tell us more.
So education, not to boil it down too much, but sell it education. Here's why we're passionate, and we have the numbers to back it up. So it's qualitative and quantitative.
Yeah, for sure. So if I'm passionate about something and I go, geez, why aren't they doing it? Let me explain more, guys. Like it's just being again clear, blunt, and to the point. And maybe I missed the boat on that the first time. That's all it is.
Yeah, cool, got you. Like you said, there is a family business, and so a lot of the same values work together there in that environment. And so, like we talked about a couple of times, and the listener is, mid-career tech professionals have families and have kids as well. The question is maybe slightly nuanced here, is that they're they're going to have maybe many of these corporate or tech professionals are just getting started with building their empire, and so to
Yep.
speak. They're thinking about, well, what can I do to give this to my kids as well?
Yeah.
How would you suggest? And they may not have any entrepreneurial or own their own business type of background. What can you say about what someone in that position might start to think about how to raise their kids to be potentially take over something and continue it versus a one generation later everything is sold off
Yeah.
and it's lost?
Two things come to mind again from track with you. One is when you met Nick. When Nick went through his journey and his injury, he said, well, look, I don't want to go to college. So I reached out instead of putting him in touch with certain mentors that I had, right? So it's one way to groom your kids at that piece of your question, for sure. Yep. Paid for, programs and free stuff, everything we could. So like a built-in curriculum, right? Second, if they want to do like a generational wealth piece and have fun with it, then I would suggest, look, we're coaching entrepreneurship. It just happens to be real estate as the vehicle, right? It's a business. Like you come in, I can try to do a deal in 20 minutes. It's everything else that comes into your play, as you know, as an entrepreneur. So we're building business owners and entrepreneurs. Oh, by the way, the vehicle is real estate. So they could, I'm biased for hours, but whatever niche you want to look at, take 3 simple steps for you and your family, and then it can be multi-generational. One, choose that niche. It doesn't matter if it's real estate even, but if it's within real estate, choose within that the niche. Then pick someone that has been where you want to be and has gone through at least some, I'll call it growing pains in economic cycles. Again, any business, restaurant, doesn't matter. Real estate is important. And then third, this is the important one. Before they get to teach their kids and bring the kids on, put the blinders on for at least 3 to 7 years and don't get shiny object syndrome. They'll have a great experience Because so picture that you pick a niche, you pick someone who's been through it, who you can trust and you like morally and ethically, and then you don't deviate from them. They're not going to say you're wrong. It's if you can just withstand the storms and be the entrepreneur. That's what it takes. It's not easy, but the outcome is huge. To your point, you could create generational wealth easily.
You have talked about that, and I really love what you said there about the choose someone to model and model them for at least 3 years.
Yeah.
How did you get to? I mean, it's not that 3 is a magic number here, but why? How did you get to thinking like the realization of you have to do it for long enough to get the traction and get the lessons learned versus a group in mastermind? I'll see people come in a year and be like, I'm good. I'm moving on to the next one.
Or it didn't work. Whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So
I just know from experience. I pick a business. Big equity funds buy businesses and give it 5 or 7 years. So I just know from watching myself and the associates, 3 years. It doesn't mean it takes you 3 years to do a deal. It means it takes you 3 years to hit a few potholes, learn, get scraped up, get some grit going, and get seasoned enough to survive. Now, you notice I said 3 to 7. I said 3 for years. I had Brian Tracy on my show during COVID, and gosh, then he was 80 something years old. And I said, I always ask even on my own show, what do you think of that? And he said, no, that's not true. 3 years doesn't work. I went, whoa, because usually they go, yeah, you're right, 3 years. He said, no, you need 7. He said, I'll tell you why, Chris. I'm 82. He said, for 2 or 3 years, you're going to suck. And then you're going to feel somewhat adequate. In the last couple of years, you're going to go over the plateau. He said it's so clear. He said, I've been broke and I've been wealthy. So since then, I don't say 3, I say 3 to 7.
Yeah.
He corrected me. He schooled me.
This was the question I really need to make sure I asked you, because I'm like, where did you get that from? Like it makes sense at first principles, but I'm just like,
well, it's also to do this though, Stephen. Picture it. So you join our community, the Wicked Smart community. You hear about Rick. He's got $1 million in deals, and so you immediately go, oh, I can do this, and in 9 months, that should be me, or 12, or whatever number you use. And then you get there, and you're not there yet, and you go, oh, I give up. Well, you just blew like a potential huge thing. So I just give it to 3 years. All I tell them, not a year, not 2, 3 years minimum.
Yeah. And I think the one I've definitely felt victim to, and I don't know, maybe you have too, but it's, it's like the thing that comes to mind is to implement before you innovate. So like, just do what you're told to do, follow the process.
Bare minimum.
Yeah.
And during doing that, I always say this. If you got an idea, I just told someone this morning on one of my mastermind calls for our community. They said something about Facebook ads, and she was throwing another idea at me. She said, do you do it? I said, no, this is today. I said, no, I'm not telling you not to. I'm going to tell you to go try it if you don't mind spending money. Then if and when it works, then you come back. But do this, I said to her. Don't do it instead of what I'm telling you. Do it in addition to, outside of what I'm telling you. Then go play. Do whatever you want.
100%. Pleasure to have you here, man. We blew through these 45 minutes way too fast. So
I told you I could talk fast.
I love it. I'll make sure everything's in the show notes, but quickly, if there's anything else you want to talk about, where people can find you, how to find you, all that.
They can find me on smartrealestatecoach.com or any social media. I'm not on social media active, but my team is. They can go. I'll give your whole tribe a gift. I think it'd be a really cool gift for them. The hard copy books we send out. And it's not one of those offers that says free book and then you got to put in shipping. It's free. Yeah. We ship it. Just go to wickedsmartbooks.com, wickedsmartbooks.com/your name, Stephen Arita, spelled out. That way I know it came from your tribe. We'll ship it out of here. Probably give you some goodies in the same box, and hope you'll enjoy it.
Outstanding. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Path to Passive. We love connecting with our listeners and those on the path to architecting their wealth and improving their lives. Feel free to let us know what topics you'd like to see in future episodes. Get in touch with us through email or Instagram. See you next week for a new episode.